Hello, I'm Dr. Lindsay Chimileski, and we're here at the University of Bridgeport College of Naturopathic Medicine's Medicinal Plant Garden. This garden was started in 2000 by Dr. Eugene Zamperone, and all the students are just forever grateful for that. It's a wonderful part of our education. As a teacher here, I get to bring the plants into the classroom to make sure my students know what the plants are and can connect with them on that physical level. And then it's also a great part of the community with folks coming together and gardening and just seeing the plant medicines and celebrating them. Students get to harvest the plants, making solid extracts and extractions, tinctures, and really getting that hands-on experience that sometimes can be lacking in the naturopathic program. So here we're going to do a little herb walk. We're going to talk about some of our favorite finds here and see what's in bloom today. Here we have an adaptogen called eluthero, or Siberian ginseng. So this is actually quite a big plant here, as you can tell next to me. It's in the same family as our other ginseng family plants, our American or Korean or Chinese ginseng, but it's a much bigger variety. It will have berries similar to our other ginseng plants, our Herbalist plants, but the berries for the eluthero will actually be a deep purple, almost a maroony blue purple that will come in the fall. So our eluthero is one of our classic adaptogens, as I said. These adaptogens were, really brought to popularity by the Russians and using them for their Olympics teams in I believe it was the 60s. They were doing lots of studies on these plants and figuring out how to, help their athletes recover from the stress of training and from the exertion of the different events without it being actually performance enhancing. And that's where the adaptogens came into play. And there's lots of interesting studies showing how it can, modulate the cortisol response, balance the immune response to different influences to really have this modulating effect. We want stress to motivate us and to feel good, but we don't want it to burden us and to kind of tip the scales in that way. So it's all about balance, and that's where our adaptogens really come into play. This one is rich in eleutherocytes that have this kind of more steroidal almost effect that can be beneficial, again, in balancing that immune response, really helpful in autoimmune conditions, as well as just a classic adaptogen to help with moderating stress. So maybe it's not something you're, taking all year round, but maybe if you have finals to study for, or if you're getting married or selling a house or anything like that, this might be an herb to go to use. Or if you're somebody who knows that you get allergies a certain time of the year, because of its immunomodulating effects, it can be a really nice one to add to the protocol then, not just to balance the immune response itself, stop sniffling or whatever it is, but also to help your body deal with that extra stress of that immune response, right? That's an extra thing that your body has to do. So if we can help preserve the system's energy in that way, our adaptogens can be really great at doing that and balancing that immune response too. So eluthero has eleutherocytes. It has a lot of steroidal-like compounds that work on hormone pathways, not only to help modulate stress, but also to help modulate immune inflammation. And so for autoimmune conditions, this can be really indicated as something that can be beneficial for controlling some of that immune confusion and self-destruction and inflammation that's happening in those conditions. And then it's also a good immune booster to use maybe a few months out of the year as your adaptogenic formula. Here we have some shots of the berry from late October, early November, and we can see how it really looks like those other ginseng family plants and how it has those dark purple colors to it instead of the red that traditional ginsengs have. And the traditional ginseng, of course, is that small kind of ground cover weed type plant versus this big shrub that the eluthero is. All right, so I'm down here in a fun little grove. We've got some teasel plants here, or dipsacus. You can see they have these really spiny edges there. Hope that photo work is good. And our dipsacus is one of our most popular plants that we use for infections like Lyme disease, right? So this is an important one to include in your Lyme protocols. And those types of conditions, it has this rosette, and it will have these big spikes that come up in the summer with purple flowers on the spike. The Chinese name translates to mean reconnect that which has been severed. So you can think of this herb definitely as one of our trauma herbs. It's traditionally used for injuries ranging from broken bones, swollen joints, spinal cord injuries, ruptured tendons, even deep cuts, broken skin, those kinds of things. It's also used in Chinese medicine as a tonic for building bone and marrow and kidney essence, or our kidney qi. And it's a good addition to longevity formulas for that reason, for mobility in our joints while we age, and for also healing severe injuries like maybe a broken hip in the elderly that can obviously create a whole host of problems and be slow to heal and spiral into worsening conditions. Then here we've got some elecampane coming up. These leaves are huge, as you can see, face for scale. Very big, and they're soft. You know, they have these demulcents in them, right? And these mucilages that are part of their sapin-rich effect for bronchodilation and as a mixed expectorant for coughs and colds. When we're looking at Asteraceae plants here, like elecampane or sunflowers or echinacea, we see this characteristic of actually a flower that looks like one flower from far away, but when we zoom in close, it's made up of multiple flowers. So on the center there's multiple flowers, hundreds of flowers even, that actually are considered separate flowers within the center circle there, and then you have the other big petals around it. So that's the idea of the compositae or the Asteraceae. And then it also aster, referring to star and that kind of big star-like shape to them. Back here, as we lean in, we've got some comfrey, some beautiful delicate little comfrey flowers here. And comfrey is one of our plants that we think about that has the unsaturated pyrrolizidine alkaloids, and these are very beneficial, but do have concerns around use with the liver. So the rule of thumb when you're using our unsaturated pyrrolizidine alkaloid plants, or what I call our upa plants, is to use them for 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. And comfrey is probably the biggest one that we think of for this use. It's also one that you can use topically, right? Comfrey is also known as bone knit, and for its ability to help with healing bones. The symphytum is the common name for comfrey, or the Latin name rather for comfrey, and it is used also as a homeopathic for broken bones and those kinds of things. When I broke my elbow a few years ago as a naturopathic medical student, I used a lot of the comfrey as a poultice and then also as a homeopathic. And by the time I went in to get an x-ray, the doctor said, "What are you doing here? It's fine, it's healing." So it's definitely one of those plants that's super powerful. Comfrey's biggest concern, besides the upas, is that it actually is so powerful in healing the skin that you could create an abscess. So it's especially important with comfrey, as well as many other herbal plants, if you're doing something to heal a wound and you're trying to heal, say, a bad cut, or even if it was a break of a bone that was so bad that something had split out of the skin, you would never want to just put comfrey on right away, because it could actually heal the top layer of the skin over the infection. So you want to make sure the infection is healed and resolved before you're using comfrey to heal that top layer of the skin. All right, here we have balloon flower, or platycodon. So this is an herb that I remember from my childhood. It has these little balloons that form that are just filled with air as the flower is being made, and they're just really fun to pop, and I definitely did that as a child, and that's where we get the balloon flower name. But this is used in Chinese medicine as a lung tonic and an herb that helps to transform phlegm. It has a slightly warming quality, so you would use it in coughs and colds that are more superficial or more of a cold nature, rather than those that have gone too hot or have any phlegm buildup already happening or heat building up. So this is going to transform phlegm and help move it out of the system. In Chinese medicine, phlegm is going to build up from our environmental hazards. It's also going to build up from the food that we eat. If we eat too much dairy or something, we see this phlegm and congestion forming in the sinuses, right? So that's an example. It doesn't always turn into that physical phlegm. Sometimes it can be more of a idea of phlegm kind of bogging down the system and the system being kind of sticky in that nature. It's going to help to get that phlegm moving and help even it from accumulating in the first place. You know, in Chinese medicine, we don't want phlegm. It's going to bog down the systems, whether it's that physical phlegm like in our breathing or also kind of sticky digestion that's not moving through. So our balloon flower is one that can be really good for those upper respiratory infections and transforming phlegm. It has a bitter and pungent taste and has saponins that are a part of its anti-inflammatory actions as well. Balloon flower is going to be one that warms and helps transform phlegm to ease coughs and have this tonifying effect on the lung. The lung is also one of the organs that builds our qi. You know, we get qi from various areas in our life, from the food that we eat and also from the breaths that we take in. And so the lung qi and that ability to transform lung qi is really important, and our balloon flower can help with that, which kind of makes sense to me with that air-filled bloom that it has. It's also... All right, in this section of the garden, we have quite a few powerful plant allies that we love to use with our patients and on ourselves, right? So first, over here we have some Althea, or marshmallow. This is in the Mauvaceae family, and mauve actually comes from, the color mauve comes from this plant family, or vice versa, but Mauvaceae is the idea of those kind of mauve, pinky, purple flowers that they get that's really unique. Our Althea is one of our mucilages rich plant and really high as a demulcent. So you can see it's a very kind of fuzzy leaf, super soft, one of those ones you just want to, you know, put on your face and feels good. And those mucilages are really good for both fighting infections and stimulating the immune response to those infections, and in healing the mucosa that's inflamed as a part of a cough or a cold. So they're great in your cough and cold formulas, they're great in digestive formulas for that demulcent effect, and you can use, you know, any part of the marshmallow. Classically, it's the roots that's used, and when you're making a marshmallow infusion, it's actually better to do a cold extraction. So you can use marshmallow root, extract it in cold water, you know, if you can overnight, or just, you know, for a few hours before you drink it, and it will turn kind of gooey, almost like a chia seed does. And that is those good mucilages that are healing for the mucous membranes and also have a good effect on stimulating the immune response. These can be applied for conditions like sore throats, where there's burning or rawness at the back of the throat. They can also be applied to things like UTIs and burning pains in the urinary tract. Also true for the digestive tract. If there's IBS or conditions of inflammation in the colon, your demulcents can be a really important part of that. Treating conditions like GERD or reflux. They're in the hibiscus family, so when you look at the flower up close, it really looks a lot like your kind of tropical hibiscus flower, and that's the Mauvaceae family. There's different varieties of this that they'll be bigger or smaller. They grow wild in marshes, and like that wild hibiscus. Also things like Rosa Sharon would also be in that Mauvaceae or hibiscus family. All right, here we have leonarus, or motherwort. This is one of our wonderful female herbs. It's an antispasmodic, so it has many applications for that reason. But then it also has this common name of motherwort and this kind of affinity for treating women's health issues, and an affinity for the uterus. So that can be useful for like period pains and PMS. It can be, especially if there's an anxiety component, or folks who get racing hearts or insomnia and that kind of overactive component. It also can be great for postmenopausal women, you know, especially if there's anxiety around that transition, or maybe anxiety around kids leaving the nest and empty nesting and what's next. If there's cardiovascular concerns around postmenopause or perimenopausal, this can be a great herb to use. It's rich in antioxidants, and for that reason it also has age-related benefits, and is going to be useful for like cognition and also relaxation. I use it as one of my go-tos for rescue formula for anxiety, so folks who get panic attacks, this is one that I'll have them keep separate and just to do, you know, directly when they're feeling that panic to calm them down pretty immediately. It's also an antispasmodic, which gives it benefit for things like PMS, not only with the emotional component, but muscle tension or cramping can be another thing where you see benefit with our motherwort or leonarus. Motherwort is in the mint family or the Lamiaceae family, so it does have those characteristics of the square stem and that side of things. And then it's also a carminative and a digestive aid, like many of our mint family plants are. And with that antispasmodic nature, that can help with stomach cramps or those kinds of things too. It also is very beneficial and commonly used in conditions of an overactive thyroid. And so we see that, overactive thyroids manifesting as palpitations and anxiety, sleeplessness, all those kinds of things that classically leonarus has been indicated for. And now we do have research that confirms that it can actually help balance and lower an overactive thyroid response. And as you can see in the name there, the leonarus cardiaca, it does have this strong affinity for also addressing the cardiovascular system, can help balance inflammation there, and can help specifically with that keynote of palpitations. Its affinity for addressing anxiety and uterine conditions and addressing issues related to motherhood, of course, and even the thyroid, make it a great herb to be used for postpartum conditions and anxiety or postpartum depression that can be all too common. If we move back here a little bit, we've got astragalus. So you can see this is in that Fabaceae family, right? It looks like your other pea family plants, like licorice or something like that maybe. And we'll show you some photos here of the yellow flowers it gets in a few months or a month or so. Astragalus is one of our huge immunomodulating herbs and one of our most important ones for fighting viruses, and is really having an important moment, I think, in our materia medica right now. So astragalus is going to be immunomodulating and helping with autoimmune conditions as well as fighting acute infections. Astragalus is useful for short-term infections, but is really beneficial for preventing infections and for long-term immune health. It can be helpful in getting stealth pathogens under control in a system that maybe has issues with viruses or infections like herpes or cold sores. This can be one that will stop the frequency of those outbreaks by boosting the system overall to get that under control. Also useful in that way for Lyme, but it's still safe to use in populations who are on immunosuppressive therapy. It's one that we see used in complementary cancer centers as an adjunct therapy to help boost the white blood cell count so you can fight off infections, while at the same time not interfering with the other work that the chemo and radiation and other parts of the cancer plan are doing. Lady, right? So this is a plant that we think about for some of our witchy plants. It has tropane alkaloids, so you might know of atropine or hyoscine or scopolamine, right? These are all tropane alkaloids that are rich in these Solanaceae family plants. And these are some of the plants that the witches would use as a part of their plant medicines, both to heal and also to have more visualary or more hallucinatory experiences, right? So the idea of being on the witch's broom and flying might have had a bit more to do with actually flying and taking off due to hallucinogens than just this idea of something from folklore, right? Belladonna is the beautiful lady, right? That's what it translates to, because we don't see them now, but when it gets its berries, they will be dark, black, rich, shiny. And the keynote there, or the way to remember that, is that they're dilated like the beautiful lady's pupils, and also like happens when you're taking hallucinogens, right? So this is something that is a part of that anticholinergic effect on dilating the pupil, and that's a part of our belladonna. Atropine is an anticholinergic or an antiparasympathetic constituent. So it can be used for instances of when we would want to turn down the parasympathetic system. This is where we see scopolamine patches being used to decrease saliva production in either hospice or in surgeries. It's also useful for bradycardia or a slow heartbeat, because it actually turns down the body's ability to slow the heart rate and therefore actually can increase a heart rate that is too slow. It also can be useful for overdose, or sometimes is used in those situations because of this. And it has that anti-parasympathetic effect. Here we have datura echinacea, or one of our moonflower plants, similar to datura stramonium, or our Jimson weed. This is going to be in the Solanaceae family, and it has those tropane alkaloids, scopolamine, hyoscyamine, and atropine, which are the ones that are responsible for the anticholinergic action. Our datura plants are our thorn apple plants. So thorn apple being the classic one for the datura stramonium, and then the datura echinacea is known as the downy thorn apple. And you can see that in the leaves here. They do have that softer kind of feel to them and that downy feel. And the leaves can actually be used topically for muscle pain, and you can get some relief there from the strong activity of this plant without, having to deal with any of the dangerous side effects or the psychoactive side effects. It is also used classically as that antispasmodic for muscle pain in other types of topical formulas, salves or poultices and things of that nature. You can see it almost looks like an eggplant plant or tomato plant. It has those Solanaceae plant features and that nightshade family. And it is a night blooming flower. So it will open up the most and release its very sweet aromatic smell at nighttime and attract things like moths and our nighttime pollinators. So it's a fun addition to your garden. And if there's moon gardens or if you want to have something like that, it's a great one to grow for that reason. The blooms last from midsummer to late summer, early fall, and have a really nice smell and big showy bloom. Here we have echinacea, or coneflower. This is one of our kind of most famous cover girls, popular natural medicines out there, right? Everybody is starting to know at least of echinacea and its immune stimulating qualities. So when we think about echinacea, we think about the polysaccharides that are really immunoboosting, and those are going to be water soluble. So that makes tea a really good idea for echinacea and for coughs and colds. And then it also has alkamides in it, which are more alcohol soluble. And that's where you get a good low alcohol content tincture using like a vodka or something like that rather than grain alcohol is going to be better to make this kind of tincture because you're going to have some of the water and some of the alcohol to extract a more full medicine. The alkamides are also responsible for the tingling that can happen with this class of plants and this family. So they tickle your tongue and you get tickling kind of all down the throat. And when that's really present, you know that it's an alkamide-rich constituent or extraction of that plant. The tingling can be alarming, so I always make sure to tell my patients about that too, so they don't think it's a allergic reaction or something like that. It also can be beneficial for the gums and for the teeth infections because of that tingling effect. And sometimes even conditions like Sjogren's or conditions where you don't have enough saliva. It's what we call a soliloquy. And this is the original snake oil. So in the 1870s, there was a doctor by the name of Dr. Meyer, and he had a Dr. Meyer's blood purifier that he would use this to help fight blood infections, which would be infectious diseases and those kinds of things, like typhoid and infections that were common at the time. It also was touted as an antidote for snake bites, and that was one of the Native American uses for it. And it does have anti-inflammatory effects, and so there could be some potential there. But he would go from town to town and threaten to get bit by the snake in order to help sell his materials. And he actually helped it get into some of the pharmacopedias by going to more prominent doctors and doing the same kind of shtick and really advocating for this plant and its use, and actually reverted some of those opinions that were negative against it, and it began to be recognized as a more and more powerful immune stimulating medicine. All right, here we have vitex tree, or chaste tree berry. This is one of our most celebrated fertility tonics. Chaste tree works directly on the pituitary and can help to balance hormones like prolactin. They're going to influence the menstrual cycle and different hormonal disorders or imbalances. Vitex can be great for stuck periods or PMS. When folks say like they feel like their period's coming but it's not quite there, and they have that maybe agitation or bloating or physical discomfort, Vitex can be a great one to use just as a tea, just at that time of the month to help bring it along. If that's happening every month, we know we need to do more work to look at the hormones and to look at the liver congestion or those kinds of things that might be contributing to the problem of that PMS feeling. But acutely, it can be one that's good to use. It also is beneficial for conditions like PCOS. That's one of those things where sometimes it can help, sometimes it seems to make people a little bit more agitated at times. It really depends on the individual, but it's used often in those cases, and really any type of dysmenorrhea or painful periods. And it also has that classic fertility promoting benefit. It has apigenin in it, which is a constituent that's going to be anti-inflammatory and have a hormone balancing effect. You can see that in other plants that we use medicinally as well. And it is in the Laminaceae family. It has a square stem here, but as you can see, it's a big shrub, so a little bit different than our other mints out there, or mint family plants. All right, here we have passion flower or passiflora or maypop. We've got the fruit here starting to form as well. So this is a vine. It's actually climbing over a hawthorn tree, which is interesting to see in the garden because we often see them working together nicely for anxiety or heart conditions, palpitations, those kinds of things. So our passiflora is an antispasmodic and it's GABAergic, and it also has many harma constituents in it, like harmaline and those kinds of things that are part of its relaxing effects. Passion flower also is going to be an anticonvulsant and has some research being done in that area because of those GABAergic effects. Since it's an antispasmodic, it's also beneficial for aches and pains. Again, that can be like a headache that's of a spasmy nature or a tension headache. It can be neck tension. It could be painful periods. It could be a sore muscle. This is going to be beneficial. It's also useful for sleep and as an antispasmodic if there's tension that's kind of keeping people up at night, if they have muscle spasms or cramps or restless legs or anything like that. With its relaxing nature, it can also be beneficial for folks who have high blood pressure that's caused from tension or irritability because it helps to calm down, as well as having that antispasmodic effect on the arteries. That's a part of that tension in the system. All right, here we have anise hyssop or agastaceae. This Agastaceae funiculum actually is the full name. This is our anise hyssop, and it's in our mint family. So we see the square stem, the alternate leaves, and that mint family flower, or the Lamiaceae family, right? And this, like our other mint family plants, is a carminative. So it's great for digestion. It has that kind of minty flavor. It also has anise and licorice and all these kind of more complex flavors too in this one. And it's useful for easing digestion. So carminatives gently ease digestion along. Sometimes if there is a lot of reflux or GERD, you don't want to do too much of mint family plants because it can actually release the lower esophageal sphincter or relax it, and then you can get more reflux in individuals who have that problem. But in other folks, it seems to help because it helps move digestion along, so you're not getting this backup that's pushing on the stomach and creating some of that reflux symptoms. That antispasmodic quality in anise hyssop and a lot of our mint family plants is also going to be beneficial for coughs and colds, bronchitis, spasming coughs, right? Coughs that you can't get under control and are really spasming. Our mint family plants are going to be really beneficial there too. The antispasmodic can also be helpful for things from like muscle pains to headaches. So definitely a great herb to use and a fun one with a unique kind of flavor and smell palette to it. Our mint family plants are also well known for their smells, and if you just kind of gently rub the leaves together, you will release some of those volatile oils, like essential oils, that are a big part of their medicinal value. That aids in their antibacterial value as well, and it can be beneficial in helping control good and bad flora growth in the gut, or overgrowth of things like yeast and that nature too.